hello everyone. We are Nerds in a Box again. This is episode 5.
Yes.
So, yes, thank you.
Yes,
So this is episode 5. This is all about board games tonight. Tabletop games, board games. And we're going to be talking about board games that are based off of intellectual properties, comics, movies, TV shows, things like that. We're going to be talking about that. But first, we wanted to welcome you guys. I am John Dwyer.
Tessa Barlotta.
Dan Kiefer.
And with us tonight is our special guest, Kyle Wilkerson.
Howdy.
Woo. He will introduce himself more in like a minute because we
because John can't make a schedule.
I can't. But mainly because I wanted to announce first that we are now on iTunes and Pocket Cast.
Yeah.
Cool.
We made it. We're top of the world, ma. We made it. Top of the world. That's a good movie reference.
Yep.
So we are now on iTunes and Pocket Cast. We're working on getting on Stitcher. So subscribe to us there. We'll post a link with this. If you scroll down, you'll also be able to see our post from a few days ago about it. So subscribe to us, like us, follow us. Thank you so much. We're also getting close to 500 likes. So that's a big thing.
Ooh.
And so when we hit 500 likes, I believe we decided that we're going to do something a little special.
Yes.
So keep your eyes peeled for that.
Yet. Okay. We totally know what we're going to do.
Yes, so we'll be announcing what we're going to do in a little bit. So thank you so much for liking our page and being a part of this. This has been absolutely wonderful, and we're so grateful.
Yeah.
So Kyle, you're a local tabletop/board game enthusiast.
That's
And
fair. It's accurate.
I was going to say, and friend of the show, so I guess I don't really know how best to do this, so why don't you go ahead and give your own hello and about yourself.
Sure. Like you said, I do tabletop games, especially. That's my sort of area of interest. Whether it's role-playing games, board games, war games on the tabletop, it's rolling dice or flipping cards. That's usually where you'll find me at the local game store or comic book store. So all those sort of things. Specifically, I typically play War Machine or Infinity. I've dabbled in 40K and Warhammer, Magic, Pokemon back in the day. You know, got to get into it young.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
Bringing it
So,
back.
all that sort of stuff.
All right. Like I mentioned a few minutes ago, we're going to be talking about tabletop games that are based off of IPs, intellectual properties. So I guess...
It's where our worlds collide.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess, do one of you guys want to talk about what we mean exactly when we're talking about intellectual properties?
Yeah. Tessa?
Oh. Well, thanks. Intellectual property, at least for our purposes, is like a world that already exists, like Star Wars, Walking Dead, the DC universe, the Marvel universes, that they translate over into a board game. It used to be like, I guess, more of an underground, as far as like I've perceived it. It was more of just like people who played them knew like about all these board games, but now like these like major intellectual properties that are based on movies are getting into it. More people are getting into not just the main ones, but like the ones that people don't know about as much.
Well, yeah, you're seeing how bankable something like Avengers is.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and at the same time, games that aren't based on IPs like Settlers of Catan are blowing up and becoming bankable as well. You're finding them at your Target. You'd never do that 5-10 years ago. So those, with them both getting big at the same time, it only makes sense that they're crossing over and showing up on, you're seeing the IPs in the board games or on the tabletop or role-playing games based on these things that aren't just made by some guy in a basement, that or big companies investing in it. And one of the big ones right now is a Star Wars X-Wing game. That's blowing up the last 6 months to a year.
Oh, yeah.
You're constantly seeing releases from it. It's totally bankable.
Oh, yeah.
And it's cool. Like, you're playing with X-Wings, and I remember playing X-Wing versus TIE Fighter video games back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone loves the trench run. Like, it's awesome stuff. But that's a miniatures game. Like, selling a miniatures game to someone is tough.
Yeah.
Like,
That's so true.
it's you have to buy all these things, and then you gotta paint it, and then you have to have dice, and you have to go hang out with some smelly neckbeards. And as one of the smelly neckbeards, I know how hard it is to get people into the store sometimes. But people are willing to go buy X-Wing off the shelf at Target. They want to try it out. And you know what? They open it up and find a solid game that looks good, and they can figure out in an hour or two and play with their friends. And if they never take it to a store and enter a tournament and never do anything with it, them and their dad, they can play at the dinner table and have a good time.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it also opens up that door too. Like even if they've been hesitant to go into a comic book store or game store and they've been in there and they're like, oh, they're playing that game that I got from, Target, whatever, and then they might be more likely to join in and then become a part of that wider culture, which is also super awesome.
Exactly. And I think, certainly the name branding helps too, because if you see you see an XWing game, you're immediately going to be like, ooh, what's that about? Like, you're at least going to pick it up and look. You're at least going to look it up and look in the back and see what it's about. Like Firefly, that came out, and I think you and I...
Oh yeah, we went crazy.
We went crazy, and we looked at it and we were like, oh, this sounds so awesome, yeah, so we bought it because it was Firefly.
Yeah.
Firefly is cool because it's an exploration game. Mm-hmm. You are flying around, you're collecting contracts, and you're doing jobs. And Firefly's all about doing the job, right?
Yeah.
So, and and they knew they had to hit the home run with the art, and they did that.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
So the art's really great in that game.
Yeah, it's the best part of the game. So you need to know what to pair with your Game of Thrones. Total political element to it. It's risk with diplomacy built in, where you're trying to argue with this and convince your buddy to stab your other buddy in the back instead of you.
I think part of why they're doing so well now is because they're being made by fans, and so they're understanding what the concept, what the whole point of the show is, and they're translating that into a game form.
I think it's a huge
to what everyone's really expecting the game to be, and that's why it's being received so well.
I think that the stuff you find that translates better is typically stuff with richer worlds and richer universes, and where you're focusing on where am I, what would I do in this situation, and you can be a little more immersive than just the characters. If you're trying to focus on specific characters or specific plot lines, you often get dragged into being railroaded, and certain things have to happen a certain way.
Yeah.
And you can even see that within games. Like sometimes the IP hurts the game. Like going back to the Firefly game, I can see it right in front of me, so I'm going to bring it up. If the Reavers get to you and you don't have a river, it's really bad news.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think maybe that's kind of where we have a disagreement on Legendary, because we were talking before the show.
Yeah.
So I'm going to bring it up now.
Exactly.
All right.
So
we'll go into examples of
so
games.
So why don't you explain what Legendary is?
All right, Legendary is Marvel's deck building game, where you pick a bunch of heroes to fight a villain. It's pretty simple. For those of you who do not know how a deck building game works, is you usually get like a set of cards from a deck laid out. You have a starting hand, and you use those points from your hand to purchase cards that the deck reveals. You take those cards, and they become part of your new deck. So throughout the game, as you purchase more and more cards, your deck grows, thus deck builder. And you use that new deck to defeat the villain. Pretty simple explanation.
Yeah.
Okay.
That works.
The way that the game is based around is the fact that you are an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. trying to assemble like a team to fight the villain. You're not necessarily playing as those heroes. So the way that I like to play the game is like you theme it out. As much fun as it is just to do like random cards, because like that does make the game fresh. You can pick which villains would technically go with the other villains. Kind of pick heroes that would go with other heroes or that would work well with other heroes. Pick a harder villain or make it harder on yourself by like adding extra things to make it more intense. Doing those features while keeping it in the mindset that you're trying to coordinate all of these heroes and then watching them do those different abilities to fight the different villains is kind of how I make that game a lot more enjoyable, rather than just being like, now I'm this character, now I'm this character. You're kind of watching the events unfold. Does that make sense?
Okay. So,
see that.
and I remember the stuff we liked out of it was we had 3 Avengers teamed up with Jean Grey.
Yeah.
So when we have our Avengers fighting together, it would make sense to play 3 Avengers cards in a row, even if they're Hulk and Iron Man, because they find ways to team up, or you can see why those cards would work well together.
Well, I think, the way you felt about like actually controlling a hero is something, that's one reason why I prefer the DC deck builder.
Okay.
Because it's a really similar concept. The way that works is that, you've got a deck of villains, they're all DC, and then they're basically like the super villains. So you've got Joker, Deathstroke, Parallax. You've got a bunch of the super ones, and you have to fight them, but you have to build your deck first. But you start with a hero, so you can have, and like the starter, it's Superman, Batman, The Flash, Green Lantern, Cyborg, Wonder Woman, Aquaman,
okay.
and Martian Manhunter. You pick one of them, and they have their own special powers, and so during it, you acquire more cards, like more heroes, more villains, more items, and then you use them to fight against the villain.
Okay.
And so I can see where legendary may be better in the sense that, like, when you grab the heroes, you know, it seems like you're using them to work more against villain as opposed to DC, where it's like, I'm going to buy, like, a villain and an item that, Martian Manhunter he'd never use Green Arrow's bow, and then, like, a hero. But what they do really well is that you are actually that hero. Like, you got their own powers to use, and you know, you feel that personal connection, that sense of immersion into it, and I think that's what you were telling me you kind of prefer.
And it might just be personal preference. Is it the difference between Marvel and DC? Marvel's all about teaming up and different guys working together, and DC's about the development of the characters and stuff.
That's also very true, like what you were saying before about how the IP influences the game even more.
Yeah.
So, that's how it's based. That's really awesome.
Well, one of the ones that we really love is Sentinels and Multiverse.
Yes.
And you know more about that than I do.
Sure I do. Okay. But yeah. Sentinels of the Multiverse. It's a really fun game. It's not actually based off of anything, but this fan made it in the idea of getting games based off of comic books. Because every single one of the cards in Sentinels of the Multiverse, all of the characters and all of their abilities have a little tag at the very bottom. It has a quote that they say, and then at the bottom it says from what issue, what comic, and everything. Even though those comics don't actually exist.
That's really cool.
I know. I looked it up. They have one comic. They have their very first comic out. I want them to make more because the first one was actually really cool because the scenes from the comic are actually on the cards.
That's really cool.
The art is created from these comics that don't exist. But it's so great. It's about these superheroes that are fighting villains, much like the other games that we were discussing. Except you get a deck. The deck is solely for that one superhero. With Sentinels, you are a team, and either you guys beat the villain together, or you don't. And there are literal support cards in there, and like support characters. There's one of my favorite characters, Arden Adept. He does like no damage. But he will heal you, he will make you stronger, he will defend against the other attacks. And there were definitely so many games where he was essential in winning that game.
I think it works really well, too, because it uses a lot of recognizable characters. Mm-hmm. Like, not in the sense where it's like anyone that you necessarily know, but like, they've got the same archetypes. Yeah, because, you know, there's someone called the Wraith, and she's essentially a female Batman, which is awesome. Right. Tachyon's Flash, Tempest is Piccolo. You know, you've got Legacy, who's basically Superman.
You have Bunker, who's basically Iron Man War Machine.
Yep. So they use a lot of familiar ideas, and so I think that's another reason why I enjoy it so much too.
It's so much fun. It's such a cooperative game, and it's brilliant.
And I think that kind of brings up the point of why board games are cool is that you play with your friends.
Well, speaking of board games and tabletop games, all these things, we actually had a question from Scott Emrine, and he asks, what fictional game would you like to see created in the real world, i.e. Quidditch?
So like...
Cool, so you talk about this. So you got this, apparently.
This is kind of dropping it back to, like, as a kid. This has always been, like, one of my dreams, is if Yugioh was actually a real-life game. I would die to walk around with like the disc, the blade thing on my arm. Just meet somebody in the street and be like, "Hey, I'm gonna duel you," and they're like, "Yeah," and they just like start throwing down cards.
No, you don't do that.
Yes, you do.
No, you go.
Not even that.
Duel. That's how you do it, Dan.
Not everybody says it like that, John.
You're gonna be Yami.
I'm not gonna be Yami. I'm gonna be myself because this is real.
Real life, John.
Go, fine, whatever. Go summon your blue-eyed white dragon.
But no, like it would just. There would be so. I would love it. It would just be so much fun.
You need to make like your own little like LARPing community of people who are willing to like dress up as the different Yu-Gi-Oh characters.
That would be wonderful.
You just have like 30
throw
people
cards
dressed
at each
up
other.
behind you.
That would be great.
Like you like get to feel like a badass and like pull the card out of here and like blue eyes white dragon go, and then there's like one person comes out like with their awesome thing and they just like.
No, but could you imagine like you're standing in a field, like you just see this army of people like dressed up as like these Yu-Gi-Oh characters behind you, and then across me there's somebody else with an army of Yu-Gi-Oh characters behind them, and they're like, Blue Eyes White Dragon, and then you see this one person come out from the crowd and just like hop in front of them, and you're like, ah!
And then you're like, I activate my trap card!
And then he falls.
And then he just falls down, yeah.
But like, could
I
you
think
imagine
they do
like,
this somewhere.
we say it and it's out there
If
already.
you guys do that, please let me know.
That's gotta be a thing.
Send us a message.
That's gotta be a thing.
But like, especially with all the cosplayers and people who make this crazy stuff.
Oh,
if
yeah.
I
you
found your
have
costume,
somebody
Dan.
who makes like
You're right.
electric weird
I just
lightning balls come
Yeah,
out of their
whatever
hand
it
or
is,
whatever.
yeah.
I can see it. I know it exists.
We'll find something.
we'll find you.
In the happy way possible.
That being said, it is now time to talk about the Little Box. So, this week, I believe in the Little Box, we're putting Destiny, the
Yes.
video game, in the Little Box. Would you like to explain why, Dan?
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
gonna pass the buck to you
I'm-
all evening.
I am explaining everything today. It
Yep.
makes me feel smart. But no, Destiny, great game. So great that it's taking all of our friends away.
I haven't seen anybody this week.
Please, come back. Come back to us.
Or beat it already.
We
Be
miss
easier.
you.
You can't beat
Yeah,
it.
beat the MMO. That's
Yeah.
it. You
Yes.
can't do that. It's like beat Halo.
Yeah.
Oh god.
I know.
That being said, if any of you would like to let us play Destiny, we would gladly join.
If there's anyone out there that would like to buy us a PlayStation 4 and Destiny to tide us over until Super Smash Bros.
We'll take it out of the box.
Yeah, we'll take
Destiny
We'll
out
take-
of the box.
Yeah. But if you
That's all
want to
it
buy us that until Super Smash Bros. Comes out
Just
in the
post on
3DS
our-
in like 3 weeks.
So excited.
I'm so excited for
My
that.
life will be gone.
We're gonna talk about that too.
Yes.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Then we'll put Dan in the little box for Ben's for Smash Brothers.
How many sick
Yes.
days do you think were called in on Tuesday?
Oh, so many.
I don't want to talk about
So many.
But yes, Destiny in the little
A lot.
box. Give us our friends back.
Yes, please. So, I believe that is all we have for this episode. We actually went a little long, so look at that. Woo. So,
Bonus content.
I know bonus content, so good luck trimming this all down to a 20-minute YouTube video,
Oh my
Dan.
God. I remember we started being like, yeah, we're
It's
gonna
easy.
we're
We'll cut
gonna
out
do
all
like
the Dan parts.
15 we're gonna make 15-minute YouTube videos. I can't do that. We'll make them 20 minutes.
You can do anything in post, right?
Shut up, John.
You can do anything
You
in
can make
post,
them
bro.
25
Well, and
minutes.
do your listeners understand that you have an hour-long podcast, and then you have the 20-minute video, right?
Yes.
So if you're watching the video, go get the rest of the content and listen to it. on the
Exactly.
Oh,
podcast.
most
And
definitely.
Speaking
I
about,
actually missed that the first week.
Oh, really?
Totally honest.
Oh no.
So
well, then we're gonna have to fix that then.
Yes.
And we actually have. So speaking of which, thank you for that brilliant segue. We are now on iTunes, as we said earlier. We're also on Pocket Casts. So we're working on getting on more places. If you have a podcasting site or an app that you want us to be on, tell us, and we'll work on trying to get on there. But right now, iTunes and Pocket Casts are the main one.
Yes.
Go
Sound-
subscribe.
SoundCloud? What's the one?
Dan's doing all that SoundCloud stuff.
That's what I've been using. It's been great.
Yeah.
SoundCloud.
So
Yeah, check out SoundCloud.
Mm-hmm.
Woo.
yes. So, well, then I guess SoundCloud, iTunes, Pocket Cast. Go check us out. Go subscribe, please. That'd be
YouTube.
really great. We're gonna have new stuff up every week.
Yeah.
So be sure to download us. And actually, next week is gonna be interesting. We're hopefully gonna have a video for you. The only reason
Oh, we will.
we will.
We'll create something for you guys.
The reason is because next weekend we're going to be at Mythicon. So that is going to be at the Doubletree by Hilton at SeaWorld. So that's over in the, well, I guess it's kind of in the Orlando area, by the theme park Orlando
it's West
area.
Orlando.
Exactly. So we're going to be there hosting panels on Saturday and Sunday, September 20th and the 21st. On Saturday, September 20th at 3 o'clock in Panel Room 2. We're going to be doing our Guardians of the Galaxy and Beyond podcast, or panel that we had actually done earlier. But we're going to have a lot of audience questions. And
Yes.
That's really great, is having that
So
audience
smart.
interaction. It's the best part. Hint, hint. And then at 7 o'clock in the same room, we're also going to be doing Marvel Expanding the Universe. We're going to be talking about how Guardians of the Galaxy will expand the Marvel universe, but also how the other movies that they're going to be talking about, that they're going to be releasing, can also affect how that's going to play out. And then on Sunday at 2 o'clock in the same panel room 2, we're going to be doing a panel that we did at Tampa Bay Comic Con called Cult TV Phenomenon. It's all about cult TV shows, why they're not necessarily popular to the mainstream, but why they have this huge loyal following, and how they can be a really good thing for a show.
And hopefully we'll be able to be filming that one to show to you guys later.
Yes, and if not, we'll come up with some kind of new content for you guys that Dan can edit.
Surprise
and post.
content.
Yeah, we'll have some kind of surprise content for you guys. So stay tuned for that. We're going to be updating you. As a reminder, we're hopefully going to be doing something for when we hit 500 likes. I think, other than that, hang on, before I forget, thank you, Kyle, for being on the show.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you so much.
It was a lot of fun.
It was so great to have you. And
Oh
it
yeah,
was-
he's on the box.
I was going to say, it was so great to have you that we drew you on the box. We drew you on the box throwing dice. Well, kind of at Stephanie, but...
I'm sure she'll catch him with her sonic
You just have to get someone else on to draw them in the way.
Exactly, we'll find somebody.
Yeah.
We'll find somebody. It could be you.
That was awkward.
Hello. A little bit.
The 90s moment came. It happened.
Exactly. So, but thank you so much for being on the show. This was absolutely great.
That's a lot of fun. I listen every week, and I'm looking forward to more of it.
We would love to have you back.
Sweet.
So, that being said, I think that's everything. So, thank you everyone for tuning in again. We'll give you guys a little roundup. I'm John Dwyer.
Tessa Barlotta.
Dan Kiefer.
And guest Kyle Wilkerson.
And thank you so much for joining us this week. Stay tuned all this week and next week for content. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Hope to see you at Mythicon.
Be there.
Or be square.
Oh god.
Or be a box.